The stars looked peaceful through the observation window of the horizon's edge. Captain Jacob Pierce stood with his hands behind his back, watching the distant lights flicker in the darkness of space. His crew had been exploring this sector for 3 months now, charting new systems and looking for signs of life. They had found plenty of dead worlds and empty space. Until today, the alarm shattered the quiet moment. Jacob rushed to the bridge where his crew scrambled to their stations. The main screen showed something impossible. 30 massive ships hung in space ahead of them, each one 3 times larger than any vessel humanity had ever built. Their hulls were dark purple and covered with strange symbols that seemed to glow with inner light. "We're being hailed," said Alex Brady, the tactical officer. His voice was steady, but Jacob could see the tension in his shoulders. This was it. First contact with an alien species. Every person on the bridge understood they were making history. Jacob straightened his uniform. "Open a channel." The screen flickered and showed a creature that made several crew members gasp. It stood nearly 8 feet tall with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished black stone. Its eyes were bright orange and seemed to burn with inner fire. When it spoke, the ship's computer translated the words into English. "Primitive vessel, you have entered space claimed by the Zetharian Collective. Identify yourselves immediately." Jacob took a breath and stepped forward. "I am Captain Jacob Pierce of the human exploration ship Horizon's Edge. We come in peace and mean no harm. We were not aware this space was claimed. We apologize for the intrusion." The alien tilted its head. For a moment, Jacob hoped this would be a simple misunderstanding. Then the creature made a sound that the computer translated as laughter. "Humans, we have heard rumors of your kind. A species still crawling on one small world, barely able to leave your own star system, and yet you dare to explore space you do not own." The alien leaned closer to its own screen. "I am War Prime Kethzar, commander of this fleet. Your apology means nothing. Your species will surrender to the collective or be eliminated." The bridge went silent. Jacob felt his stomach drop. This was not how first contact was supposed to go. "Perhaps we can discuss this diplomatically," Jacob said carefully. "We have an ambassador aboard. Lisa Monroe is trained in negotiation and conflict resolution. Allow us to send her to your flagship. We can work this out peacefully." Kethzar seemed to consider this. "Very well. Send your ambassador. She has 1 hour to convince me why your species deserves to exist. If she fails, your ship will be destroyed as an example." The channel closed. Jacob immediately called for Lisa. She arrived on the bridge within minutes, her dark hair pulled back and her expression calm despite the situation. Jacob explained everything quickly. "I understand," Lisa said simply. "I'll do my best." She took a small shuttle across the void between ships. Jacob watched her go and felt helpless. His crew worked around him, scanning the alien vessels and gathering whatever data they could. Alex pulled up tactical displays showing the alien weapons. The readings were terrifying. "Their energy shields are stronger than anything we have," Alex said quietly. "Their weapons could cut through our hull like paper. Even their smallest ships outgun our largest military vessels. Captain, if this goes wrong—" "I know," Jacob said. He did not need Alex to finish the sentence. They were completely outmatched. An hour felt like an eternity. When Lisa's shuttle finally returned, Jacob met her in the docking bay. Her face was pale and her hands shook slightly as she stepped out. "We're in serious trouble," she said without preamble. "Kethzar sees us as insects. The Zetharians have conquered 47 different species across hundreds of systems. They believe they have a divine right to rule the galaxy. They think we're weak and pathetic." "What did you tell him?" Jacob asked. "I tried everything. I offered trade, cultural exchange, mutual defense treaties. Nothing worked. He's giving humanity 30 days to surrender every colony, every ship, every weapon. If we refuse, they'll come to Earth and wipe us out." Lisa's voice cracked. "Jacob, he showed me what they did to the last species that refused. They burned every city, killed every living thing, and turned the planet into a monument to their power. He said humans would serve as slaves or die. Those are our only choices." The crew members who heard this looked at each other with growing fear. Jacob felt a cold fury building in his chest. Humanity had dreamed of finding other life in the universe for centuries. They had imagined peaceful meetings and shared knowledge. They had hoped for friends among the stars. Instead, they found conquerors who saw them as nothing more than targets. Dr. Helen Grant stepped forward. She was the ship's xenobiologist, brought along to study any alien life they might find. "Captain, I reviewed all the data we collected during Lisa's visit. I scanned their biological signatures and studied their behavior patterns. I found something interesting. What is it? Jacob asked. The Zitharians are powerful, yes, but they're also predictable. Every species they conquered fell quickly because they all fought the same way. They tried to match the Zitharians' technology and failed. They fought conventional battles and lost. The Zitharians have never faced a species that refused to play by their rules. Helen pulled up data on her tablet. They expect us to be afraid. They expect us to either surrender or fight a losing battle using normal tactics. They think they know exactly what we'll do. Alex caught on immediately. They've never fought someone unpredictable. Someone desperate enough to try anything. Exactly, Helen said. They've studied us. They know we're technologically inferior, but they don't understand human nature. They don't know our history. They don't know that we're the species that survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They don't know that we've never rolled over for anyone. Jacob looked at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes, but also something else. Determination. Anger. Humanity had reached for the stars with hope and found only threats, but they were not going to lie down and die. Set course for Earth, Jacob ordered. Maximum speed. We have 30 days to prepare for war. He turned to Lisa. Contact every human colony and military installation. Tell them what's coming. Tell them to get ready. As the horizon's edge turned toward home, Jacob watched the Zitharian fleet disappear behind them. Those aliens thought they knew what would happen next. They thought they had already won. They were about to learn a hard lesson about humanity. Humans did not surrender. They did not give up. And when threatened with extinction, they became the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The war was coming, and the Zitharians had no idea what they had just started. The emergency council room in Geneva was packed with every major world leader and military commander. President Marcus Hall stood at the head of the table, his face grave as he listened to Captain Jacob Pierce's report. The room had been silent for the past 20 minutes while Jacob explained everything about the Zitharians and their ultimatum. 27 days remaining, Marcus said when Jacob finished. 27 days to either surrender our entire species or prepare to fight an enemy we cannot possibly defeat in conventional warfare. General Kyle Bennett slammed his fist on the table. We don't surrender. That's not an option. But the captain is right. If we try to fight them ship to ship, weapon to weapon, we'll lose in hours. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Admiral Patricia Stone pulled up holographic displays showing Earth's military assets. We have 214 military vessels. Most are patrol ships or small frigates. Our largest battleship is a quarter the size of their smallest cruiser. We have 19 orbital defense stations and 43 colonies across 12 systems. Against 300 warships with superior technology, we might as well be throwing rocks. Then we throw rocks, said a voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned. Daniel Cross stood up from his seat. He was a civilian engineer who designed mining equipment and spacecraft systems. Most people in the room barely knew who he was. Explain yourself, Marcus said. Daniel walked to the front and gestured at the displays. They're better than us at their kind of warfare. So we don't fight their kind of warfare. We fight ours. Humanity didn't conquer Earth by being the strongest or the fastest. We won because we used tools, because we adapted, because we were willing to do whatever it took to survive. Kyle raised an eyebrow. You want to fight starships with mining equipment? I want to fight starships with everything, Daniel said. Every asteroid in the belt can become a weapon. Every civilian ship can be retrofitted. Every piece of technology we have can be weaponized. The Zitharians expect a military battle. We give them total war. The room erupted in discussion. Some called it madness. Others called it desperation. But as they talked, a plan began to form. Sophie Clark, a young lieutenant who had been taking notes, stood up nervously. Sir, if I may. I work in the civilian shipping division. We have over 9,000 cargo vessels and mining ships. Most have powerful engines designed to move asteroids and heavy equipment. If we remove the cargo holds and pack them with explosives, each one becomes a massive bomb. We could set them on automated courses directly at enemy ships. Suicide vessels, Patricia said slowly. Automated kamikaze attacks. It's ugly, Sophie admitted. But it might work. They won't expect it. Nathan Brooks, a physicist, leaned forward. I've been working on experimental weapons that we abandoned because they were too dangerous or unstable. Radiation bombs, gravity wells, biological agents. We stopped development because they violated treaties and seemed too inhumane. But there are no treaties with aliens. We could finish those projects in weeks if we dedicated resources. Amy Foster, one of the intelligence officers, added her thoughts. We intercepted some of their communications. I've been studying their language and protocols. Their military operates on strict hierarchies and predictable patterns. If I can crack more of their codes, we might be able to feed them false information, confuse their fleet movements, maybe even turn some ships against each other. Ideas flew around the room faster and faster. Someone suggested turning orbital stations into giant shotguns that fired thousands of metal pellets. Another proposed mining the approach routes to Earth with nuclear devices. A third recommended training ground forces in guerrilla tactics in case the aliens tried to invade colonies. Marcus listened to all of it. Finally, he held up his hand for silence. This is not the war we wanted, he said quietly. This is not the first contact we dreamed about. But this is the reality we face. The Zetharians see us as weak. They see us as easy prey. They think we'll either surrender or die quickly. He looked around the room. We're going to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. We're going to show them what happens when you threaten humanity. Over the next 25 days, Earth transformed itself. Every shipyard worked around the clock. Civilian vessels were stripped down and packed with explosives. Sophie personally oversaw the conversion of 300 cargo ships into automated weapons. Nathan's research team rushed to complete their experimental weapons. They created mines that generated localized gravity fields strong enough to tear ships apart. They built radiation bombs that would cook anything organic within 100 kilometers. They developed biological weapons specifically designed to target Zetharian physiology. Based on the scans Dr. Helen Grant had taken, Amy and her team worked 20-hour days cracking Zetharian codes. They learned the aliens' communication protocols, their military ranks, their operational procedures. Amy discovered that Zetharian commanders rarely questioned orders from superiors. If she could inject false commands into their network, she might cause chaos in their fleet. Vincent Shaw, one of humanity's best pilots, organized fighter squadrons. He threw out the standard military tactics and taught his pilots to be unpredictable. Fly erratically, attack from unexpected angles, break off and run, then circle back when the enemy relaxes. Make the aliens guess what comes next. Maya Rodriguez, a colonel with experience in asymmetric warfare, took command of the asteroid belt operations. She organized teams to attach engines and guidance systems to thousands of rocks. Each asteroid was programmed to accelerate toward the Zetharian fleet when it arrived. Some carried explosives. Some were just heavy rocks moving at incredible speeds. All of them were deadly. Jacob Pierce was given command of the Defiant Dawn, a battleship that had been upgraded with every weapon humanity could mount. It would serve as the flagship for the defense fleet. He spent his days coordinating between all the different teams, making sure everyone was ready. Lisa Monroe had a different job. She worked with a team of linguists and psychologists to craft a message. When the Zetharians arrived, they would receive one final broadcast before the battle began. It needed to be perfect. It needed to make them understand they had made a terrible mistake. On the 28th day, all the preparations were complete. Every ship was in position. Every weapon was armed. Every soldier knew their role. Earth's orbital space bristled with defenses. The asteroid belt had become a minefield. Millions of people had evacuated to underground shelters. On the 29th day, the waiting became unbearable. Families said goodbye to loved ones in the military. Children were taught to hide. Everyone knew what was coming. On the 30th day, the Zetharian fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system. 300 warships arranged in perfect formation, advancing slowly toward Earth. War Prime Kethzar broadcast a simple message demanding immediate surrender. He received no reply. Instead, every communication system in the fleet received Lisa's carefully crafted message. Jacob Pierce delivered it personally, his face calm but his eyes burning with determination. You wanted war. You will learn why we are the species that crawled out of caves and conquered our entire world. You will learn what happens when you threaten humanity's children. Steel yourself for what comes. The message ended. For 5 seconds there was silence, then hell began. War Prime Kethzar watched the human message with amusement. The primitive captain thought words would frighten the Zetharian collective. He had conquered species far more advanced than these humans. This would be over quickly. All ships advance, Kethzar commanded. Destroy their orbital defenses first, then proceed to the surface. Leave no military installation intact. The fleet moved forward in perfect formation, 300 warships gliding through space like predators approaching helpless prey, their weapons powered up, energy shields glowing with protective force. Kethazar had seen this 100 times before. The natives would fire desperately, accomplish nothing, and then beg for mercy. He would grant them none. The first sign something was wrong came from the sensor officer. War Prime detecting multiple objects accelerating toward us from the asteroid belt. Thousands of them. Kethazar glanced at the display. Asteroids? They're throwing rocks at us? Destroy them. The fleet's weapons opened fire. Brilliant beams of energy lanced through space, vaporizing the incoming asteroids. Explosions bloomed like flowers in the darkness. But there were so many. For every rock they destroyed, 10 more appeared behind it. Evasive maneuvers, Kethzar ordered, annoyed now. The formation broke apart as ships dodged the incoming projectiles. Most of the asteroids were destroyed, but a few got through. One massive rock, moving at incredible speed, slammed into a frigate's shield. The shield held, but the impact sent the ship spinning off course. Maya Rodriguez watched the displays from her command center on the moon. That's it, she whispered. Stay focused on the rocks. Don't see what's really coming. While the Zetharians were busy shooting asteroids, the real attack began. 300 automated cargo ships, stripped down to engines and explosives, accelerated from hiding spots throughout the solar system. They came from above and below, from behind planets and moons, converging on the alien fleet from every direction. The Zetharians detected them too late. The first cargo ship plowed into a destroyer before it could raise shields. The explosion ripped the alien vessel in half. 2 more cargo ships hit a heavy cruiser simultaneously. The ship's shields failed and its hull cracked open, spilling atmosphere into space. What is this? Kethazar roared. They're sacrificing their own ships? His tactical officer looked confused. They're not manned, War Prime. They're automated. No life signs. Sophie Clark monitored the attack from a bunker on Earth, tears streaming down her face as she watched each converted cargo ship fulfill its purpose. These had been trading vessels, mining ships, transporters that fed colonies and carried supplies. Now they were weapons, and they were working. The Zetharian fleet scrambled to respond. Their superior weapons meant nothing when the humans refused to fight a conventional battle. Ships were destroyed, but more cargo vessels kept coming. The tight formation fell apart as captains tried to avoid the suicide ships. Now, Jacob Pierce said calmly from the bridge of the Defiant Dawn. All fighters, attack pattern random 7. Do not give them predictable targets. Vincent Shaw led 200 human fighters into the chaos. They flew like insects, darting and weaving, impossible to track. The Zetharians expected fighters to attack in formation, to follow standard tactics. Instead, Vincent's pilots seemed to fly drunk, spinning and rolling, attacking from bizarre angles, then fleeing before the enemy could lock weapons. One fighter would strafe a Zetharian ship from above, while 3 more hit it from behind. They would break off in different directions, only to regroup and hit another target from a completely different approach. The Zetharian targeting systems, designed for conventional warfare, struggled to predict movements that made no tactical sense. Alex Brady coordinated the defense from his station. Activate the mines, sections 4 through 9. Throughout the battle zone, hidden mines suddenly powered up. Nathan's experimental weapons came alive. Gravity wells activated, creating zones of crushing force that tore at ship hulls. Radiation bombs detonated, invisible but deadly, cooking the interiors of alien vessels whose shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not radioactive particles. A Zetharian battlecruiser stumbled into a gravity well. Its hull groaned and buckled as forces it was never designed to withstand pulled it apart. The ship broke in 3 pieces, each spinning away into the void. Amy Foster worked frantically at her station, fingers flying over keyboards. She had finally cracked the Zetharian command codes. Now she was feeding false orders into their network. 3 enemy ships received commands to break off and pursue a phantom human fleet. 2 more were ordered to return to the rear for urgent repairs. 1 confused captain received orders to fire on a friendly vessel. The Zetharians were not losing, but they were bleeding. 20 ships destroyed, 30 damaged. The battle should have been over in minutes. Instead, it had raged for 2 hours and the humans showed no sign of stopping. Enough, Kethzar bellowed. All ships focus fire on the planet. Burn their cities. Show them the price of resistance. The fleet began to regroup, preparing to bombard Earth itself. This was the moment Jacob had been dreading. His fleet could harass the Zetharians, but they could not stop them from glassing the planet, unless they did something insane. All remaining vessels. Jacob broadcast. This is Pierce. Execute final protocol. It's been an honor. 20 human warships battered and damaged turned directly toward the Zetharian command ship. They fired every weapon they had while accelerating at maximum speed. The Zetharians fired back, destroying half the ships, but the rest kept coming. Sophie, watching from Earth, understood immediately. She had converted cargo ships. Now the military was converting themselves. The Defiant Dawn led the charge. Jacob stood on the bridge as weapons fire hammered his shields. "Evacuate the ship," he ordered his crew. "Take the escape pods. This is my fight now." "Like hell it is," Alex said, staying at his station. Around the bridge, the entire command crew remained. None of them reached for the escape pods. Jacob wanted to order them off. He wanted to save them, but there was no time. Then let's make this count. The Defiant Dawn, along with 6 other ships that refused to break off, slammed into Keithzar's flagship. The combined impacts overwhelmed the shields. Explosions rippled across the massive vessel's hull. The bridge section tore away. Secondary explosions erupted throughout the ship. War Prime Kethazar had one last moment to understand his mistake. These humans were not weak. They were not afraid. They were willing to die to protect their world. And that made them more dangerous than any species he had ever faced. The flagship exploded in a brilliant fireball that lit up the solar system. On Earth, millions watched the screens in stunned silence. They had just seen their finest warriors sacrifice everything. The cost was devastating. But the Zetharian command ship was destroyed, and the enemy fleet had fallen into chaos. Maya activated the second wave of asteroid strikes. Nathan triggered every remaining mine. Vincent rallied the surviving fighters for one more attack. Amy sent false retreat orders to half the Zetharian fleet. The battle was far from over. Earth was battered and burning. Millions were dead, but humanity was still fighting. And the Zetharians were learning a terrible lesson. You could have better technology. You could have bigger ships. You could have conquered 100 worlds. But none of that mattered if your enemy refused to accept defeat. The war continued through the darkness of space, lit by fire and fury. The Zetharian fleet was in chaos. With War Prime Kethazar dead, 3 different commanders claimed authority over the armada. Sub-Commander Vrath insisted on continuing the assault. Commander Jexkal wanted to regroup and wait for reinforcements. Commander Shear argued they should retreat and reassess. While they argued over communication channels, humanity struck again and again. The coordinated alien fleet became scattered groups of ships, each fighting their own desperate battle. Amy Foster's misinformation had worked better than anyone hoped. Half the Zetharian vessels were following false orders, wandering away from the main battle or attacking empty coordinates. But the Zetharians were still dangerous. Nearly 200 warships remained operational, and they were angry. Vrath finally seized control by destroying Jexkal's ship as an example. The remaining commanders fell in line, terrified into obedience. "All ships target the 4th planet," Vrath commanded. "They call it Mars. We will burn it to ash and show them the price of defiance." Mars was home to 3 million colonists. The Red Planet had been humanity's second home for 50 years, with domed cities and underground farms. Now it became the next battlefield. Admiral Patricia Stone commanded the Mars Defense Fleet from the orbital station Olympus Watch. She had 23 ships, 5 orbital platforms, and a determination to protect every person on the planet below. "All civilian transports, begin evacuation," Patricia ordered. "Military vessels prepare for engagement. We hold this line." On the surface, Colonel Maya Rodriguez organized ground defenses. She had survived the space battle and made it to Mars just ahead of the Zetharian fleet. Now she coordinated the defense of New Phoenix, the largest city on Mars. "They'll try to land troops," Maya told her staff. "When they do, we fight them in the streets. Make them pay for every meter. Use the buildings, use the tunnels, use everything. They expect us to line up and fight fair. Show them we don't know what fair means." The Zetharian fleet arrived at Mars like a hammer falling. Patricia's small defense force met them with everything they had. Ships danced between orbital platforms using the stations as cover. Missiles flew in swarms. Energy beams crisscrossed space. 3 human ships died in the first minute, but they took 2 Zetharian frigates with them. Vincent Shaw led the surviving fighter squadrons in desperate attacks. His pilots were exhausted, their fighters damaged and barely functional. But they kept fighting. One pilot, her ship falling apart around her, aimed directly at a Zetharian cruiser. "For Earth," she said calmly before impact. Patricia watched her fleet die ship by ship. They were holding longer than anyone expected, but math was math. She had too few vessels against too many enemies. The Zetharians pushed through, closing on Mars itself. "All stations, this is Stone," Patricia broadcast. "It has been an honor. Execute Protocol Scorched Earth." The orbital platforms activated their self-destruct sequences.
As Zetharian ships closed in to destroy them, the platforms exploded with the force of small nuclear weapons.
The blasts took 4 enemy ships with them and damaged a dozen more. On the surface, Maya watched the explosions light up the sky. "Here they come," she said. Zetharian landing craft began descending through the thin atmosphere, aiming for New Phoenix and other major settlements. The first landing craft touched down in the central plaza. Zetharian soldiers poured out, their armor gleaming, their weapons ready. They expected terrified civilians or soldiers in defensive positions. Instead, they found an empty city. "Where are they?" a Zetharian squad leader asked, scanning the abandoned buildings. The answer came as explosions erupted beneath their feet. Maya had mined every major landing zone. The central plaza disappeared in fire, taking 2 landing craft and 36 soldiers with it. Surviving Zetharians scrambled for cover among the buildings. That was when the real fighting began. Humans appeared from nowhere. They fired from windows, from rooftops, from underground passages. They struck and disappeared before the aliens could return fire. One squad of Zetharians entered a building, searching for enemies. They found empty rooms rigged with motion sensor explosives. The building collapsed on them. Another group pursued human soldiers into the tunnel system beneath the city. They walked into ambushes at every turn. The narrow tunnels negated the aliens' superior weapons. In the darkness and confusion, human soldiers used knives, close-range shotguns, and pure desperation. The Zetharians were stronger individually. They were better armed, but the humans were fighting for their homes. Every colonist knew these streets, these buildings, these tunnels. The battle became a nightmare of guerrilla warfare that the alien soldiers had never experienced. Above the battle, Vincent Shaw made one last attack run on a Zetharian carrier. His fighter was barely responding, its systems fried, its weapons empty. He aimed the entire craft at the carrier's engine section and pushed the throttle to maximum. "This one's for Jacob," he said, thinking of Captain Pierce and all the others who had sacrificed themselves. The fighter punched through the carrier's weakened shield and detonated against the engines. The massive ship lost power and began falling toward Mars. Patricia, watching from her crippled flagship, saw her chance. She ordered her last 3 functional vessels to fire everything at the falling carrier. The combined assault tore the carrier apart. Its pieces rained down on the empty desert far from any city. One piece struck a Zetharian landing zone, destroying 6 more landing craft. In the ruins of New Phoenix, Maya coordinated her scattered forces. "Fall back to Tunnel System Delta. Collapse entry points behind you. Make them dig us out." The colonists and soldiers retreated into the deepest tunnels, bringing supplies and weapons. Behind them, they triggered demolition charges that brought down buildings and sealed off passages. The Zetharians would have to fight for every tunnel, every room, every meter of ground. Above the planet, Patricia's last ship was dying. Hull breaches vented atmosphere. Fires raged through 3 decks. Most of her crew was dead or evacuated. She stood alone on the bridge, targeting systems barely functional, and fired one last time at a Zetharian battlecruiser. The shot struck the battlecruiser's bridge, killing its commander. "Mars will remember," Patricia said as her ship finally broke apart around her. The Zetharians had taken Mars orbit, but at devastating cost. 43 ships destroyed or damaged. Thousands of soldiers dead or trapped in brutal urban fighting. The planet itself was contested, with human resistance continuing underground. Back at Earth, Dr. Helen Grant monitored the biological weapon she had deployed. The virus, designed specifically for Zetharian physiology, was spreading through the enemy fleet. It was not immediately lethal, but it caused disorientation, weakness, and system failures. Infected crews made mistakes. Ship operations became sluggish. Nathan Brooks activated his final surprise. Deep in the asteroid belt, he had hidden a dozen experimental weapons. Now he triggered them remotely. Artificial wormholes opened randomly throughout the battle zone. Several Zetharian ships, already damaged, were caught in the gravitational anomalies and torn apart. Amy Foster, working with only 2 other survivors from her intelligence team, continued to inject chaos into Zetharian communications. She sent false reports of human reinforcements arriving. She created fake orders that contradicted each other. She made the aliens paranoid and confused. The battle for Mars raged on, but the outcome was clear. The Zetharians were winning through sheer numbers, but they were paying a price they never imagined. Every victory cost them ships and soldiers. Every advance brought more casualties. Commander Vrath looked at the casualty reports and felt something alien to Zetharian culture. Doubt. They had lost over 100 ships. Thousands of warriors were dead. The humans showed no sign of surrendering, even as their worlds burned. For the first time, Vrath wondered if this conquest was worth the cost. On Earth, President Marcus Hall addressed the surviving population from a bunker deep underground. Mars is holding. Our people are fighting. Every hour they resist is an hour we use to prepare the next defense. The Zetharians wanted an easy victory. We're teaching them there's no such thing when fighting humanity. The war was far from over, but humanity was still in the fight. Commander Vrath stared at the tactical displays and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. The Zetharian fleet had started with 300 warships. Now barely 120 remained operational. Thousands of warriors were dead. Dozens of ships limped along with critical damage, and still the humans fought. On Mars, the underground resistance had held out for 6 days. Zetharian soldiers reported nightmare conditions in the tunnel networks. Humans attacked from darkness, used poison gas, rigged traps that killed entire squads. The aliens controlled the surface, but they could not root out the defenders below. Vrath received reports of his troops refusing to enter certain areas. Warriors who had conquered planets were now afraid of empty buildings and dark tunnels. The psychological damage was worse than the physical casualties. Perhaps we should negotiate, suggested one of his sub-commanders carefully. Accept a conditional surrender from them. Save our remaining forces. Vrath almost killed him for suggesting such weakness, but he stopped himself. The sub-commander was not wrong. This war had become a disaster. The decision was taken from him by events. Dr. Helen Grant's biological weapon had been spreading through the fleet for days. Now it reached critical mass. Ship crews began falling ill by the hundreds. Some vessels lost so many personnel they could barely function. The virus was not deadly, but it was incapacitating. Engineering is reporting system failures across the fleet, Vrath's tactical officer said. Medical bays are overwhelmed. Half our ships are operating at reduced capacity. Before Vrath could respond, Amy Foster's final gambit struck. She had spent weeks studying Zetharian military protocols. Now she understood them well enough to create a perfect forgery. False orders, apparently from the Zetharian High Command, appeared across the fleet network. Immediate retreat. Mission failed. Return to collective space for emergency repairs and reinforcements. 10 ships, their commanders sick and confused, believed the orders and broke off. They jumped to faster than light speed and fled the system. Vrath realized what was happening. That is a human trick. Ignore those orders. All ships hold position. But more ships were already leaving. Some commanders, seeing their fellows retreat, assumed they had missed the genuine orders. Others used it as an excuse to escape the nightmare. The disciplined Zetharian fleet began falling apart. On Earth, General Kyle Bennett watched the alien fleet fracture and saw his opportunity. All remaining forces attack now. Hit them while they're confused. The battered remnants of Earth's military struck. It was not a large force. 36 fighters, 2 capital ships, and a handful of armed civilian vessels. But they hit the aliens at the worst possible moment. Lisa Monroe, who had been coordinating resistance efforts, broadcast a new message. It went out on all frequencies aimed directly at the Zetharian fleet. You came to conquer Earth. You believed we were weak. You thought we would surrender or die quickly. How many ships have you lost? How many warriors will never return home? Is this conquest worth the cost? She paused, letting the words sink in. This is your last chance. Leave now or we will pursue you across the stars. We will hunt every ship. We will track you to your home worlds. You wanted war with humanity. Now you have it. And we will never stop. It was a bluff. Earth barely had the strength to defend itself, let alone pursue anyone. But the Zetharians did not know that. They saw a species that refused to die, that kept fighting when they should have been extinct. They saw 300 ships reduced to barely 100. They saw warriors terrified of shadows. Commander Vrath made his decision. All ships retreat. Full speed. We returned to collective space. The order went out across the fleet. Some commanders were relieved. Others were angry at the humiliation. But none wanted to stay. The surviving Zetharian warships turned away from Earth and Mars and jumped to faster-than-light speed. On Earth, people emerged from bunkers to see the alien fleet disappearing. They did not cheer. They did not celebrate. They were too exhausted, too traumatized. Millions were dead. Cities were burning. Mars was devastated, but they had survived. President Marcus Hall addressed the world from the ruins of Geneva. We won, not because we were stronger, not because we had better weapons. We won because we refused to lose. We won because every human from Earth to the outer colonies stood together and said, no, no, you will not conquer us. No, you will not make us slaves. No, we will not go quietly into extinction. The rebuilding began immediately. It would take years, maybe decades, to repair the damage. But humanity got to work. General Kyle Bennett created a new military doctrine based on lessons learned. Conventional warfare was secondary. Adaptability, unpredictability, and willingness to use any tactic were primary. The military began training for the next threat, whoever it might be. Daniel Cross led the effort to improve Earth's technology. They had survived with inferior equipment through desperation and creativity. Now they would advance, learning from captured Zetharian technology while maintaining the human edge in tactical innovation. Sophie Clark, one of the few survivors of the suicide ship program, worked on defensive systems. She ensured that every colony, every outpost had the ability to defend itself. Never again would humanity be caught unprepared. Amy Foster and her intelligence team continued their work, cracking alien languages and codes. If there were other species out there, humanity needed to understand them. Knowledge was a weapon as important as any bomb. Maya Rodriguez, pulled from the tunnels of Mars, took command of ground forces training. She taught soldiers how to fight overwhelming odds, how to use terrain and psychology, how to never give up. Her motto became famous. The enemy can have better weapons, but they can't have better will. On the moon, a memorial was built. It listed every name of every person who died in the war. Thousands upon thousands of names carved in stone that would last forever. At the center stood a statue of Captain Jacob Pierce looking toward the stars with determination. At the dedication ceremony, Lisa Monroe spoke to the survivors. We lost so much. So many friends, family members, heroes. Jacob Pierce gave his life to protect Earth. Admiral Patricia Stone died defending Mars. Vincent Shaw and thousands of others sacrificed everything. We honor them not with words, but with action. We honor them by making sure humanity is never threatened like this again. Young Lieutenant Pete Morrison stood in the crowd, looking at the memorial. He had fought in the Mars tunnels under Maya's command. He had seen friends die. He had killed Zetharian soldiers in desperate close-quarters combat. He was only 23 years old, but he felt ancient. We remember, Pete whispered, reading the names carved in stone. We remember and we prepare. In the depths of space, the surviving Zetharian fleet limped home. They had lost more than half their ships. Thousands of warriors were dead. The entire fleet was traumatized and demoralized. When they reached collective space, the High Command demanded answers. Commander Vrath submitted his report with shame and fear. He described the human tactics, the suicide attacks, the biological weapons, the psychological warfare. He described warriors afraid to enter buildings, ships destroyed by automated bombs, a disciplined fleet reduced to chaos. The collective's Supreme Council read the report in silence. Finally, the First Prime spoke. These humans are dangerous beyond measure. They do not fight with honor. They do not accept defeat. They are willing to sacrifice everything to win. Mark their space as forbidden. No ship enters human territory. No contact is to be made. We will find easier conquests elsewhere. An entry was added to the collective's archive. Species designation, human. Homeworld, Earth. Threat assessment, extreme. Status, avoid all contact. Reason, species demonstrates unprecedented capacity for violence, creativity, and warfare, and absolute refusal to surrender. Conventional conquest impossible. Recommend isolation. Humanity had sent its message across the stars. They were not the strongest species. They were not the most advanced. But they were the species that would never stop fighting for survival. The war was over. But humanity's journey into the galaxy had just begun. And now every species who heard the story knew one simple truth. When you threaten humans with extinction, you do not get a quick victory, you get hell.